We have the third key speaker, and before I ask him to start his presentation, it's a quite interesting story that how I know him or how I get to know him. A few years ago, I had a program in Boston, United States, involving the Boston University and the CBRE, real estate development, and we had a very fine conversation just about the North American system, let's call a little bit the business-based elderly care versus the European system. And they say, these gentlemen, this professional, that they know someone who is a top expert in this field. I didn't know him, I was looking for him, but now I know him, I get to know him, and I can say that Ron van Bloa is one of the top professional here in Europe, what we have in the health care investment or healthcare business. And later on, my own presentation will reflect on this United States or North American business-based healthcare versus European national insurances-based system. So I think we will receive a great presentation from him, and I'm looking forward hearing your presentation on. So here is your floor.
Time to shine. Thank you for your kind words, Martin. I will start to share my screen, and I will give a brief introduction myself. Yes, I think it works because well, after this great presentations, let's switch to the hard elements and components of healthcare. So I will give a short keynote about the multiple impact of healthcare real estate. Brief introduction myself. I'm one of the 4 partners of HEVO. We are a leading consultancy, project management and development company based in the Netherlands, totally focused on the alternative real assets. And since 2012, I'm also lecturer at the Amsterdam School of Real Estate. We are an academic institute for real estate science and postgraduate programs, like the Master of Science in Real Estate. And this year we founded the Senior Housing and Healthcare Association, and it's really great. And I'm also a bit proud to be the chairman of this association, because we are joined by a beautiful group of industry leaders regarding healthcare and the investment business. Well, talking about my purpose, actually I'm focused on making impact by the built environment and making impact on people's lives, and especially the vulnerable people. So I'm concerned about aging, I'm concerned about people with disabilities, but also the cure side. So that's my professional purpose. A few facts and figures concerning my own company. We've got a quite impressive track record because we were established in 1970. And in the Netherlands, we are the 3rd biggest because we are part of the TBI holdings. So biggest in terms of annual turnover, but maybe we are also one of the thought leaders regarding especially the alternative real assets, so healthcare and educational facilities. And when we talk about state-of-the-art healthcare real estate, this is one of our great examples in Maastricht, the south of the Netherlands, where we established a state-of-the-art facility for people with dementia. Amsterdam School of Real Estate, a few lines, what I told before, academic institute. I've got a few courses regarding asset management, real estate finance, and also the viability of the business case, because I think affordability of real estate is one of the most important questions. And I think the previous keynotes also focused on that. We've got a lot of type of customers, and especially the financial side of the customer is quite important, because I think in general, the local governments are pulling away, and it's actually quite key that we can afford the real estate from ourselves. So can we pay the annual rent or the monthly rent ourselves? That's one of the most important elements in my business, in my daily practice. What I told before, the association, yeah, really proud, and maybe a few lines why we need an association. And I totally agree with the great intro by the professor, because it's really key to share insights, knowledge, but also to share energy, because I think we can learn a lot from each other. We are based in the Netherlands, but we can learn a lot from the Nordics or Belgium and Germany. They've got a very professional elderly care, long-term care system. So the main idea was, can we create a platform, a multi-stakeholder platform where we can share insights? And it's really great that I can say that these are the founding members, the founding partners of this association. So you can see thought leaders like a Belgian real estate Identifica, but also Dutch players like Sintros of Mea. And I think ICBRE has a global scope. So that's also one of the purposes. Maybe let's start on a European scale, but aging problems are a global issue. So I think it would be great when we can share experience with Asia and the US in the near future. And I think it's good to know that well, the relevance of an association is we try to drive the maturity of the senior housing and investment market, because we are convinced that when we share thoughts, we can create a great built environment where we can help to create an age-friendly environment for our people. But it's quite difficult, because we have a lack of unbiased data. So we need independent data to create benchmarks, for example. But especially also the definition side, we determine definitions, because when we speak about healthcare, it's really from the range from cure to care. And when we make a closer view on the care side, it's from the aging perspective, like senior housing, up to the disability perspective, but also the mental health care. So it's like a really broad range of topics. And the problem of confusion of tongues is very large, especially when you speak with other people from different countries. And I'm really convinced that sharing best practices on a European level leads to inspiration and better knowledge. In the end, when we talk about the multiple impact of the association, we try to improve quality of life. And not only for the aging population, but I think it's relevant also for society to get a grip on also the GDP, because when we look at healthcare expenditures related to the GDP, well, it's really a challenge. How can we pay all the silver aging? How can we pay it with the total society? And we are convinced that we can add some quality via the built environment to, well, make life better, but also to well, also the financial perspective to get a grip on it. Well, I speak a lot all over Europe, from the Baltics and I'm writing a lot about this topic. And one of the main questions is, why is healthcare becoming a serious asset class? I was very pleased by the invitation from Martin that I'm also sharing my knowledge in different areas, like the eastern part of Europe, because I think you can learn a lot from us, and vice versa. I get inspired by the great presentation from the previous experts. But it's interesting from an investment perspective that healthcare is becoming an asset class. So now a short keynote, and maybe I'm a lecturer myself, so I will give a very short and brief insights about the drivers of healthcare real estate. Well, and of course, it's simple because aging demographics are driving. So on one hand, the elderly population, I think forecast on 2060, roughly 30% of our total inhabitants will be over an age of 65 years old. So it's really challenging. How can we arrange this social infrastructure and also build environment infrastructure for this elderly population? But also on the diseases perspective, the dementia, for example, 1 of 5 gets dementia. It's really a tough question. How can we make specific facilities for this type of person with this type of disease? And I think it's important that we create a built environment where we try to make a positive impact on these people's lives. So, and that's a strange one-liner, because from an investor perspective, so a real estate investment perspective, these forecasts offers a guarantee of cash flow. And I think it reflects to the first keynote from the Professor Jan, my Dutch colleague, that there are a different type and also different goals when you speak about healthcare. And the goal of an investor is how can we try to get a guarantee on the business case. Nevertheless, we are trying to align those goals. So how can we make impact with a euro on the real estate perspective, and how can we improve people's lives? And that's also my purpose, to align those goals together. Yeah, then what I told before, also one of the purposes of the association is to clarify the type of assets, the variety of typologies, because we have senior living, senior housing, which is really a residential product. People try to live as long as possible at home, and they don't want to live in a very large scale accommodation where, when maybe I'm a healthy person, I now live next to a person who has Korsakoff or dementia. So I think it's really important to unwrap this type of assets. So in rough statement, we divide senior living from long-term care, where we are focused on dementia, but also the more specialized cure side, where we speak about primary care, but also the medical office buildings. And I think it's relevant to underline that there's a variety in terms of rental level, scale, and facilities. So also the differences between big hubs or the more rural areas, we make small scale facilities in more rural areas, instead of maybe when you build something in Amsterdam, where you can make a facility of 150 units per asset. So in the end, also the consumer question, what's the demand? And the demand is actually focused, and also the target groups are the most important. And I divide, and I will give 3 examples, because it starts with the self-sufficient elderly people. And when you get more care of or demand of care, I think the first add-on is services. So you live at home, you try to live as long as possible, and to upgrade your quality of life, you need services. And not only healthcare services, but also meet people, the educational side. So it was really great to see the third age universities, because I think it's important being actually live life learning. I think it's very relevant. But after this phase, I think we focus on the more vulnerable elderly people. So when mobility and isolation is becoming a problem, we need to create a different type of built environment. And in the end, when people are suffering from dementia or Korsakoff or more physical problems, we need to make specific facilities. And then I think it's in the range from residential up to the special services for long-term care. And I think, to give 3 examples, in the Netherlands, we developed it ourselves in close cooperation with a non-for-profit healthcare operator, Rendant, in cooperation with the REIT Idivica. And it's really a great example of senior housing, roughly 120 apartments where people live apart, they have their own lives, and they can meet each other in shared facilities, but it's really about being self-sufficient. Another example is more on people with problems of mobility, but also a bit of dementia, where we developed a great project. And it's also actually a more, it's like a small city where we try to organize living as long as possible, but also with quite severe problems from mobility or dementia. And then our long-term care facilities are really focused on dementia, and also maybe roughly the last 6 or 9 months of people's lives. And I think it's quite important that the long-term care facilities, for example, in Europe, are really specialized facilities. So the care intensity is high, and it's really about focus and also the care facility. Just some insights about a project or a type of facility, how it looked like, for example, in the Netherlands. Then maybe a few one-liners on the healthcare operator scope, because why is the investment demand growing? And there are some, we do a lot of research, and it's interesting that we see that these operators have large-scale real estate portfolios, but these are mainly outdated. And I think, for example, in the eastern part of Europe, we've got no real estate. So, or maybe we've got some outdated properties, but we try to make new real estate. When we focus on the outdated portfolios, the sustainability performance is getting more and more attention. And we've signed the Paris Agreement, and we try to make a future-proof and also Paris-proof real estate portfolio. The problem is that roughly all the healthcare operators have limited balance sheet possibilities, but they are quite aware that they have a competitive side on the real estate asset to attract customers. So real estate is becoming important, not only for the customer, but also for the child of the customer, to attract them, because they are really in a competitive environment. And we see more and more consolidation on the healthcare operators' perspective. So we've got operators like Korian or Orfea, 2 examples from France and Belgium, and they expand their business cross-border. So healthcare is becoming a pan-European market, to my humble opinion. Nevertheless, the result is we see a significant growth of the European investment market. And I think it's important also for these group of attendees to give a few insights on the investors' perspective, because investors are looking for volume, but also diversification. And it's interesting that mainly the investors are investing in offices or retail or residential products, but actually they are focused on long-term cash flows. And therefore healthcare ticks all the boxes, because we can say also with the demographics that we can actually give a guarantee that they will have 30 years of cash flow in this project. And of course, therefore, we can state that this asset class is non-correlated to political tension and also the economic cycle. So we've seen COVID-19, and I think healthcare is maybe even getting more attention, because we are now aware how important it is to have a very high-end healthcare environment. So it's going from a niche asset class to a mature market. And it's interesting to give you some also some data, because it's getting in terms of deal flow, it's getting more attention, and also it's getting from single asset to portfolio deals. One example is Identifica, who did a acquisition in the United Kingdom, roughly 450 million pounds. So it's really a big one. And it's I think an example that healthcare, so the business of healthcare investments are getting more attention. And it's also quite interesting for healthcare operators to try to cooperate with these types of professional healthcare investors. Yeah, and when I talk about data, we can also look back, and it's very interesting to see the rising deal flow, and also on a European scale. I think we speak about roughly 7 billion of deal flow only on the real estate perspective. So, and I think it will take some time when they first started in UK, Netherlands, Nordics, and now they expand to Spain, they expand to Italy, but also to Central European countries like the Baltics. And I think maybe Hungary could be interesting in the next couple of years. Maybe one insight regarding also the deal flow of senior living, because I think senior living will explode. And it's one example and proof that some research by Savills, they proved that even in the H1 2020, so when COVID was exploding, the deal flow, investment deal flow, increased by 25% compared to the same period last year. And indeed, it's now mainly focused on European countries like UK and France, but I think it will take maybe 5 years where we can see deal flow all over Europe. And I think maybe even parties from the US will enter the European market, because in the end, I'm convinced that healthcare real estate is really a global market. The one last topic, and that's actually my purpose. It's about the impact of healthcare real estate, because I'm not focused on making impact on a financial way. I'm convinced that we can align those goals. And this is one of my personal purposes where I believe in, and I think it's important that we try to align the goals of an investor, and they have goals on an environmental, social, and governance perspective, and how can we align it with the sustainable development goals of the United Nations. And it's really interesting, especially on the social element of healthcare investments, that we can make impact on the user. And I think that's the key question. How can we create user happiness with the built environment? So ESG and SDGs, these are the environmental, social, and governance perspective, and the SDGs from the United Nations. We can try to align this within a value chain. So in the end, when you have a happy user, it ticks all the boxes, and we invest on the other side. So that's, we have to cooperate with each other and align our goals together. And it's also one of my last sheets of this keynote, that when we make a positive impact on the environmental side, for example, the sustainability perspective, and we can also make a positive impact of quality of life, yeah, it has 2 or 3. And the third one, and it's quite important, is getting more and more attention, that when we do a good risk management and also affordability in terms of a rental level, but also the GDP costs, I think we will see more and more investments on the healthcare side, because it's important for total society. And in the end, I'm going out of my bed and I'm giving keynotes because of this happiness. The smile of this beautiful woman, a lady, is actually, that's everything, to my opinion. So wrap up, healthcare real estate, why it's multiple impacted. I think on a investment perspective, it has volume, diversification, and long-term cash flow. And indeed, the guarantee of the cash flow is driven by the aging demographics and diseases. So from an environmental and social and governance perspective, healthcare real estate really ticks all the boxes. And I think also from more the social elements of healthcare, or the more also the governmental perspective, I think we should cooperate to in the end improve quality of life of our aging population. And that's my keynote. So thank you for your attention, and feel free to ask questions.
Thank you, Ron. It's absolutely fascinating to listen to your presentation and your data, and especially I like the picture of this old happy lady. Just remind me that as a researcher, I started to do research these issues, these aging issues, health issues, 10, 15 years ago. And my grandma encouraged me to research and to do what's going on in the world, because she felt that it's something missing. It's something really missing from the processes. And in the last 10 years, I just visited almost one EU countries. I talked to many experts. And afterwards, I had a chance to visit North America, Canada, and the United States. Even we had a program, and I was involved in a few study tours. And one of the study tours was in Florida. It's supported by Minto Group, who is one of the biggest senior village developer in Florida, in this area, especially at Daytona Beach and South Florida, and I had a kind of experience that in North America, all seniors, they know what they expect from the service. I guess you mean what I think. I mean, if they want to move to a senior village or they want to move to elderly care, it's quite obvious. It doesn't matter, is it in Florida or it's in New Jersey or maybe it's nearby Toronto. Everybody knows what they get from their money. And it was very, 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 very interesting to me that mostly this is a business-based, let's call it mostly business-based service. We know why, but there is a kind of contradiction here, what we have in Europe, because here in Europe we have a large number of healthcare real estate owned and run by the government or municipalities. And there are, in the Western countries, in the Western European countries, there is a history of running private institutes. But here in the Central Europe, that we had a lack of this experience, especially what we have from the private investment side. Mostly we have with the government, and if I say that the majority of the people has some kind of fear going into a type of government-run business, because the service, the quality, what they get from there, it's not the same. There is not the same level. So when I reflect on that, in the United States or in Canada, you pay for something and you get exactly the same service, and everybody knows what's going on. Here in Europe, I think I just wrote it down. I think there is a contradiction that, especially in different nations, have different, let's call it environmental, social needs. So, what do you think about that? What is your opinion about?
It was a long question. Well, I totally agree that I don't believe in blueprints. So when it's successful in the US, it won't work on the same way in Europe. And when it's successful in the Netherlands, it won't work in the Baltics. So I think therefore also the research side is therefore so much important that we should be aware of one, the consumer demand and behavior. I think every country has its own characteristics, like the Professor Jan Zulkema also clarified. And I think the second aspect, and you also was referring that the governmental issue and also the maturity of the healthcare market is very different between countries. So you have to be aware of this, the differences between these elements. So I think when you, for example, make a concept or a real estate business, you should have a really close knowledge of the local effects and figures. So that when we make a business case, the most important question is, where's the demand? What type of customers? Regulation perspective, feasibility, like what's the possibility from a rental level? So it takes some research to make a good concept which works on a local level. So yeah, but I think it's when it would be easy, we won't have this type of meeting. So I'm happy that we have added value. Yeah.
I know a very great institute. This is a HEVO. This is a special institute in Netherlands, in Amsterdam, and they are dealing with dementia and Alzheimer. And you know, when we are talking about, I don't know, we call about health issue, social issue, whatever. But this is an issue that we, as you mentioned in your presentation, that we have to deal with it, and we have to be involved, because from every 4 elderly people, there is one who is involved in who can be involved in the dementia. Yeah. And my question is that you reflected on that in the previous question, that every nation has a different needs and there are other perspectives. In the United States, when we have, for example, when they have patients or the people who are living in these senior living villages, usually they provide a local translator. And the reason is why, because when we have a dementia or when the people are getting older, they have a running service that, for example, if I'm a Hungarian and I'm getting old in the States, in these facilities, it's not a problem, because I forget my second language or third language, and I only can speak on my mother language. And it's not a problem because the facility can provide. And when I did my research here in Europe, and everybody says that this is impossible, that if I am a German, I will move to Croatia, or if I am a French, I will go to Poland, because we have language barriers, language problems. So what do you think? Because I said 2 contradictions. So one is, there is a business-based service that you pay, you get for it, it doesn't matter. And here in people, they have a fear, nation fear, for example, from French, from Dutch, that if I move to another country when I'm getting older, maybe they don't understand me. If I have a dementia, what I'm gonna do? So what do you think? What is the solution?
Well, yeah, it's a $1 million question, of course, but I think when people are getting more mobility questions, or they're getting dementia, I think they would like to be as close as possible to home. So maybe where they grew up or something like that. And nevertheless, I do believe in the senior expat concept. But that's actually more on the senior level perspective. So therefore, also my statement that when we look at asset classes and also the groups of customers, we start on the left side from the spectrum, which is about living as long as possible at home. So these are senior living questions. So when you're 65 or 75 years old, maybe you can be an expert on a senior level perspective. So going in the winter to Greece or to maybe an Asia country. But I think when we are suffering from Alzheimer's or dementia, you would go back to your roots, I think.
Yeah, you know that we have a product what we are developing. This is a Matra resort senior living.
Yeah,
and,
I know, great.
We are doing this for 9 years, and we have this is the main problem that how can we be on the international market, and we have a program now, and we think exactly what I want to reflect on your valuable thoughts, that maybe if we can create a kind of European standard, a European elderly care standard. Maybe there is a touch of Dutch, a touch of French, a touch of German influence. It could be a little bit, let's say, a multi type of services, easy to understand. And now we just get from a perspective, from an accessibility perspective, that maybe this could be the breakthrough, which is a very, very developed or developing now, especially in the European Union. So I guess I guess you agree with me, or if not, just say that that you have a different opinion about that.
No, I totally agree, because I think you should use our lessons learned, and therefore you can speed up your learning cycle. Because I think the US are the first entrers, 10 years later Europe, then the more central Europe, and I think it's like a tsunami. So you should speed up, and maybe digitalization is a really good driver to speed up also your knowledge side. And one of the drivers of the association is maybe we can learn you something wherefore you are able to speed up your own development and skip 5 years of learning. That would be great. So also my invitation to all the attendees, feel free to join the association, maybe as a friend. And also please contact me via LinkedIn, because we should create a group of person-driven people on the healthcare business.